What I want to explore with you now is this world of alcohol. Is it adding energy or is it robbing energy? Welcome to the Energy Equation optimized by Pure Sport. This is the podcast all around energy, how we use it, how we manage it, how we unlock it. I'm Oli Patrick, a physiologist with 25 years of experience in trying to work out who is well and who is not, and where energy plays a crucial role. In these episodes, which supplement our guest interviews, we take you into a deeper realm of the Energy Equation universe. Here we get a chance to explore some of the themes that come out of our interviews, but challenge some of the science behind them. What are the misconceptions? And importantly, what are the practical elements that you can take away to your own lives? It's been several years since the science came out that said a bottle of wine gives the same increased risk of cancer as up to 10 cigarettes per week. That is a staggering fact when you consider how alcohol still sits in our cultural and social plans, whereas what's happened to smoking over this last decade plus. What I want to explore with you now is this world of alcohol. What is it doing? How do we manage it? And why are so many of our guests changing their relationship with alcohol? In my life as a physiologist, I've spent time discussing alcohol day in, day out. And I go back to my early discussions around alcohol back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when people were naturally worried about their alcohol consumption and the risk of liver disease. And when we were in the world of health screening, people always wanted to have a blood test to check, is my liver coping with the volume of alcohol I consume? So what is the optimal volume of alcohol? Well, the guidelines changed years ago, but the recommendation now for males and females is less than 14 units per week, with somewhere between 2 and 3 units in a pint of beer and something of similar volume in a large glass of wine. So that's not that many drinks, maybe 5 to 7 drinks over the course of a week. And when people wanted to test whether they were exceeding that or not, they would naturally look to their liver, because we know alcohol is a toxin. And toxins of all types get detoxified through our liver. Here at the Energy Equation, we are not here to tell you what to do. If I go onto any social media platform, there's someone telling me off for something I'm doing, making me feel guilty or inadequate. That's not what we're here to do. What we want is you to have the tools to make informed choices. We want you to learn from our guests' positive behaviors, their errors, and their learnings, what you can draw into your own existence. Fundamentally, when we look at alcohol, it's a sensitive topic and we don't know your personal circumstance. I couldn't dare to. In all my years in clinical practice, alcohol comes up in most conversations with people wanting to understand, are they getting away with the volume they're drinking? We want to give you an understanding of what the choices are, what the implications are, and you have a better, improved toolkit to manage your health, your energy, and your lifestyle overall. If you haven't had an opportunity to listen to my Energy Equation episode with Aaron Kraskell, please do. Aaron shares incredibly openly about his relationship with alcohol, from addiction to now being free from addiction, but work in progress. What he shares is an incredible transformation in energy, in the quality of his relationships, in his creative pursuits, and he's a living ambassador for what the removal of alcohol from your lifestyle can look like, and a great example of how difficult that is, what are the real challenges, but how it can be done. In the origins of when people were worried about their relationship with alcohol, it was 2 key questions. First question is my liver coping with the alcohol I'm consuming? And the second question was around that potential for a disproportionate relationship with alcohol. Am I becoming addicted, dependent on it? The first question is always an interesting one because many of those people, we check their liver and the enzymes that break alcohol down were not raised. There was no sign of inflammation on an ultrasound. There was no sign alcohol was causing damage. But did that mean they had a healthy relationship with alcohol? What I've always been interested in is that alcohol's impact on liver is one of the challenges it raises to human physiology. And our understanding of how it challenges you, not just from a health point of view, but from an energy point of view, across so many different systems, has risen and is still rising. And when I first started looking into the impact of alcohol on those people I was looking after, the first and most prevalent thing I would find is a depreciation of energy. Alcohol robbed those individuals of energy. And I think that ties back to what our guests noticed enormously. Alcohol has faced a really challenging time over the last few years because when we first heard about alcohol and health, we were told that a little bit was good for you. that there was something in red wine called resveratrol that reduced my risk of a heart attack. And there might be iron in my Guinness, which gives me the chance to solve anemia. And there may be this benefit, there may be that. The science now reveals that there is no dose of alcohol that has a beneficial impact on human health and physiology. I want to caveat that later to say that doesn't mean I'm anti-alcohol, and very much we're going to talk about a balanced, healthy relationship with something that forms a key part of most people's lives, including mine. But its impact on how you feel is extremely relevant. When I first started measuring sleep in clinical environments, that's when I really got interested in helping people understand alcohol. Because there's this classic misconception that alcohol helps you sleep. And if any of you wear one of these sleep trackers or a device that tracks your recovery levels on your wrist, on your ring, or somewhere else, you might notice that alcohol has a very strange relationship with sleep, rest, and recovery. In most cases, it compromises it enormously. It kills it. Alcohol does help us fall asleep, what we call sleep latency, how quickly from hitting the pillow, I'm into the land of dreams. But sleep isn't about time spent asleep. I could spend 7, 8, 9, 10 hours asleep. What I want from sleep is to go through these different cycles and stages of sleep that do different things for my body. Deep sleep, restoring memory and growth. Rapid eye movement or dream state sleep, where I process all my emotions and have a huge role on my creative brain. What we see with alcohol, it may help me fall into a state of sleep, but it kills those two stages in particular. Deep sleep and rapid eye movement or REM sleep are massively reduced under the presence of even a single glass of an alcoholic drink. That's devastating. And what's really challenging is that often people use alcohol as a part of their approach to falling asleep because they're wired. They've had an intense day. The guests we've had on the energy equation lead high-performing lives. They have a huge volume of stress. And under stressful situations, the body does build muscle tension. It does feel that heightened sense of anxiousness. And alcohol comes in, rides in on its horse, and relieves some of those symptoms. It's a muscle relaxant. It has a short-term impact on improving the neurotransmitter dopamine that, again, makes me feel uplifted. It has a small-term influence on serotonin, the neurotransmitter that makes me feel happy. It has a small-term impact on reducing muscle tension, which makes me feel relaxed. It feels like a good stress relievant. But what it's actually doing is compromising my biggest opportunity to get over stress, which is sleep. And then what we're finding increasingly is that people who regularly consume even small doses of alcohol have a slightly higher stress response the rest of the time. So it may take away that short-term feeling of stress, but actually, through changing our body's relationship with a hormone called cortisol, it interferes with my stress levels the next day, the day after, and forevermore. So alcohol is a false dawn. It's dressed up as a stress relaxer, but really, in many ways, it's a stress incubator, and that's really difficult to hear. A lot of that impact I'm talking about there is about the brain, and the brain is where we've really got increasingly concerned about even small doses of alcohol. What is now being proven to be true is that alcohol has a negative impact on the structure of your brain. At relatively small dosages, we see the outside layer of the brain, the cortex, shrinking. We see a compromise in the very cells that hold you, your personality, your memory, your capability. And when we're seeing a rise of what we call neurocognitive disease, your Alzheimer's, your dementias, we are seeing alcohol playing a key role in the development of those conditions. Again, at dosages within government guidelines. What is the safe dose of alcohol? Well, from a health point of view, we have to go back and say every drink of alcohol you have is unfortunately a negative challenge to your physiology. At what point does that tip over into dysfunction? That'll be down largely to your genetics, to how able your body is to manage its personal alcohol intake. But every single drink, unfortunately, from a pure physiological perspective, is not good for you. When we're discussing alcohol, we have to reconcile lots of people enjoy it, and it's served a great purpose for lots of people in social situations. It would be fair to say that I would be single were it not for alcohol. How is that so? Well, the role of alcohol in suppressing that prefrontal cortex, the part of you that is limited with doubt, the part of you that isn't prepared to go for things, well, that part was shut down on the night that I approached my wife. Fundamentally, my prefrontal cortex should have logically said, she's too good for you, or you're not good enough for her. Yet, with that part of my brain suppressed, I went across, made my move, And many years later, here we are. Now, the ideal is that you don't need that prefrontal cortex suppressed. Of course, we don't want individuals who aren't them true selves, but it does release that bit of inhibition. And what you'll find, interestingly, is new companies trying to create different ways of eliciting that calm in the brain, mimicking what we call the GABA pathway by using herbs like ashwagandha or L-theanine, these alternative ways of trying to induce a calmer brain, less reserved, and elicit those same social situations as I found with my wife all those years ago. New year, new me? These days, it feels like every brand is shouting about how supplements are the answer to everything. But before you jump into the latest wellness trend, it's worth remembering that the basics come first. Hydration, good nutrition, rest, and movement, these are the foundations of feeling your best. When you do decide to supplement, what you choose matters. My advice is to look for products that are free from additives, free from artificial flavors and unnecessary fillers. Personally, having seen lots of professional athletes using their products, I decided to try Pure Sport supplements. Their products are built on science, they're backed with evidence, they've got minimal ingredients, and they do what they're meant to do. Whether it's their ultra electrolytes to keep you hydrated and energized, or their unwind product to improve your deep sleep. I trust what they make is developed with care to work with your body, not against it. As you set your goals for 2025, remember, it's not about quick fixes, it's about small, smart choices that support your long-term wellness. Explore the full range of Pure Sport at their website, puresport.co, and discover the clean, natural way to feel your best. Use the code EE10 at checkout for an extra 10% off. The reality of alcohol is it does make us feel good. It does remove that brake pedal on our behavior. It removes our ability to sense check ourselves. And of course, you can see the positive and the negative of that. What we have is an ability to feel relaxed, ability to feel less shackled by our inhibitions. And in many cases, lots of our strongest social connections have been formed in the presence of alcohol and alcohol as a way of re-enabling those social structures. So that's a challenge. And we have to look at well-being holistically and say, something may be bad for my physiology, but it might be good for my emotional well-being. And we know those connections, those relationships have as important a role on health as potentially doing steps and sleeping and eating a nourishing diet. So we have to frame all discussions with alcohol around the fact lots of people enjoy it. And if you enjoy it and it's a key part of your life, we're not here to say you shouldn't do it. As with all things energy equation, we want informed choice. We want you to make a better decision knowing the facts rather than feeling coerced or manipulated into something. And we're learning from our guests on this podcast that they've made that choice to what they believe is a greater benefit than when they had alcohol as a key part of their lives. I do want to go on about some of the further challenges of alcohol because they extend beyond this challenge to brain health. We mentioned at the very start of this about the increased risk of cancer, and that seems to sit fairly squarely with a compromised immunity. Your immune system, these clever cells and different elements that mop up viruses, that get rid of bacteria, that challenge our body's own ability to break down and clear out dead cells, is compromised by alcohol, even at those small dosages. When we look at immunity and we look at why people feel pretty low energy and potentially terrible while using alcohol, we're drawn back to another area that's been discussed on the energy equation, the gut. The gut, this sort of collective term for your whole digestive process, but really with the gut, we're thinking about the large intestine and the bacteria that live in there forming the second you. We've heard guests on the energy equation talk about the microbiome, these trillions of bacteria that live on and in your body that work with your cells to keep you well. Now, you'll probably know that alcohol is antibacterial. We used to use it for sterilizing in clinical situations. And that's because alcohol can kill bacteria. And therefore, it can also kill lots of the good bacteria. And what we're increasingly seeing is that regular alcohol intake is disrupting the gut microbiome, the second you. And without those bacteria there, we run the risk of increased digestive problems. But more importantly, beyond the digestive, we see that those cells, when they consume the fiber from your diet, they drive your immune system. And if alcohol has disrupted those cells' ability to be there, that immune benefit cannot be held. So when we look at the feeling from alcohol, we can say this is disrupting sleep, your body's best and strongest opportunity to restore energy. Alcohol's giving a short-term burst of stress relief, but actually is increasing your gradual exposure to chronic stress, making you more likely to feel stressed on every other day when you're not drinking. Alcohol is suppressing your immunity directly, but it's also impairing your gut and your gut microbiome, leaving you open to those external invaders, viruses and bacteria. But more worryingly, when our own cells turn on us, those early cancer cells, that's disrupted also. As you'll hear in the series, we know hormonal health and energy are closely intertwined. One of the impacts alcohol has on energy may be through a change in our relationship with blood glucose, the energy that's always traveling around in our bloodstream. And we see with regular alcohol use an impaired ability to control the glucose in our bloodstream, which may have a short-term impact on energy levels, but certainly could increase our risk of conditions like type 2 diabetes later in life. A more pressing concern, perhaps, will be its impact on testosterone, what we call an androgen hormone, a hormone that builds tissue up in the body. And men have lots of it. Females also require a significant amount. And what we see with alcohol is it can assist testosterone being converted into estrogen. Again, a different hormone with different impacts on the body. From a male point of view, that could be a challenge to having reduced testosterone, reduced energy, and we often find low testosterone getting mixed together with symptoms like early depression because of the fatigue and the loss of virility that comes with it. For females, it's important too, and that loss of testosterone in females and increased estrogen may be a factor in the increased risk of breast cancer, which is the highest cancer associated with increased alcohol consumption. This is all before we get to an obvious disruption of alcohol, which is the fact it is negative calories. Alcohol has calories in it. In fact, there's 7 calories per gram of alcohol, which is second only to fat, which has 9 calories per gram. So it's quite calorie dense. But unlike fat, unlike carbohydrate, unlike protein, it has no nutritional value. Alcohol doesn't perform an important task in our tissues. I don't run on it in any meaningful way. There is a form of energy I can extract from alcohol, but it would be a very poor choice compared to other nutrient groups. So when someone has 1-2 glasses of wine, that is potentially a couple of 100 calories that just wouldn't be there outside of that situation. When we look at weight management, which has been a key discussion with a few guests through the energy equation, we know the body's got a very precise mechanism of eating the right number of calories to the calories it burns. And that 100 to 200 extra calories could make the difference between someone losing half a stone and gaining half a stone over the course of a year. That's quite significant. So the empty calories form another reason why we must be careful with introducing the right volume of alcohol against the demands of our lifestyle, particularly how active we are being. I'm keeping this to the functional rather than the dependency piece because that's the main message. If someone's changed their relationship with alcohol to the point where they need it, they feel they can't exist without it, we must then be judicious and say that's a good time to pop to your healthcare professional and discuss that with them. Ultimately, alcohol and its relationship with society is changing. We're seeing now bars and nightclubs slightly repurposing to what we're calling social wellness spaces. One of the big trends coming out of America is low and no alcohol, and we're seeing that through the UK also. And we're seeing places that used to be pubs and bars being replaced with saunas and ice baths and low and no alcohol bars. That's a really exciting development and reflects that the new generations coming through are less prepared to feel compromised by their regular intake of alcohol. In fact, one of the fastest growing food and beverage categories in the world is low and no alcohol alternatives, which is an exciting developing area. Ultimately, we're seeing alcohol changing across the face of society. You have to look at alcohol as a real challenge to your energy. You might get a short-term uplift and you might feel good under the presence of that reduced inhibition of your prefrontal cortex, that reduced muscle tone, that slight uplift in the neurotransmitters of pleasure. But you do have to see alcohol as an enemy to your long-term energy. It's an enemy to sleep. It's an enemy to your gut health. It's an enemy to your immunity. It's an enemy to good quality weight management. It's an enemy to you fundamentally being able to access and deliver as much energy as you'd like. That doesn't mean don't use it, but to use it when you're tired, to use it when you're stressed, to use it when you're run down, to use it when your immune system's not flying, that would be the question I'd like you to ask of yourself. We have to reframe our relationship with alcohol from something we do consistently as part of our routine to using it in high energy situations, in social constructs, where we have high energy naturally. Can I embed alcohol into that? Absolutely. If I'm using it to manage my stress, to manage my sleep, to manage my life, then we'll face a real energetic challenge. The long-term health risks are there, but I don't think many people make their choices day in, day out to avoid a disease they've never heard of that may or may not happen in 50 years' time. I think we live in the present. And from an energy point of view, alcohol is a direct challenge to that. We don't tend to make decisions now for something that may or may not happen 20 or 30 years in the future. And I think that's very human. We tend to make our big decisions on how we feel in the present. So when I ask our guests how they feel out of 100 from an energy point of view, I'm always interested that if they're below 80 and they regularly use alcohol, I've immediately got a tool that could increase that score. And I want you to think about your personal energy levels. And if they are less than 80 or 75 or lower, and alcohol is forming a regular part of your social structure, your recovery from work, your general day in and day out of life, then I would just ask you to ask a question of alcohol. Is it adding energy or is it robbing energy? And what you'll find is in almost all cases, it is robbing energy. Keep an eye on dry January and watch how people report their skin clearing up. Watch how they report feeling fantastic. Watch how they report better digestive health. That is purely because alcohol is challenging those systems, and a reduction in alcohol to whatever level is sustainable is a brilliant thing to consider, both in the beginning of the new year, but at any point and at any stage of life. I hope you find that beneficial for you, your personal energy management, and thank you for listening to The Energy Equation.